Good morning, TEDxLansing. It's good to be here today. I did have an opportunity to experience things that I'd never seen before. There are more points in your life that you don't realize that are going to change the direction. There was a point in my life where my parents gave me an opportunity to get a subscription to a magazine, and I didn't pick Sports Illustrated, but I picked National Geographic. And that moment changed really the direction of where I would go. I began a list, I called it my world list, of all the places I wanted to see, the places that I dreamt about going to. And over the years, I wanted to make sure that I got to them. Fast forward to another point. I'm having breakfast on the island of Ios in Greece with a friend, and we talk about our journeys, our lives, and how come we don't ever live the dreams that we had. And we made a pact at that breakfast that if in 4 years, beginning of 2008, if we were still single and had the financial means, we would quit everything and go see the world. And I got to tell you that he did it and I did it, and it was a journey that we will never forget. He went with me for 6 months because he got engaged right before we left. His wife would not let him go the whole entire 17 months. But we had an experience, and it was an opportunity, and I want to share that with you. At first, for me, the journey was about the world list. It was about the things I wanted to see, the places that I dreamt about, the things that I saw in National Geographic. I did, over 17 months, go to 46 different countries. I had the opportunity to see things that you can't imagine when you see them up front. Over those 46 countries in that 17 months, I had experiences with nature, with people, and with lost cities. Every moment was a learning experience for me. But as I went through that experience, I really realized that there was more to this experience and more to this trip than I ever really imagined. I had saved up money to get my executive MBA, and that's how I was able to fund this trip. I spent 10 years or so putting those resources together, and I was supposed to go get my executive MBA, and I decided I was going to go get a different experience. And so I instead quit my job as mayor of the city of East Lansing. I didn't run for re-election. I quit my most fun professional job I've ever had when I was the president and CEO of the Michigan Nonprofit Association to go get my master's degree. So let me tell you a little bit about my master's degree. First, it was Public Policy 201. I had the opportunity to be traveling during our presidential elections during 2008, but I also had the opportunity to see other presidential elections throughout different countries. And for me, some of the key moments were people's conversations with me. I will remember distinctly being in Chile, having a conversation with a woman. My Spanish is very poor. She was about 42. Her daughter was 17. She spoke English very well, and she translated for me. And we had a conversation about America and politics. And her biggest issue was Guantanamo Bay. And she wanted to talk to me about that. And I can remember distinctly as her daughter said to me, she said, America used to be the moral center of the world, and now you're just the economic center of the world. And she told me how she lived through Pinochet and the dictator there, and the impact of torture and what that meant to their country, and what does that mean to us as a country and standing in the world. And that was the moment that I would remember. I had the opportunity to be in Cluj-Napoca in Romania to talk to the mayor at that point in time. He was running for his re-election. His party actually won, and now he's the prime minister of Romania, Emil Bach. I had the opportunity to celebrate Obama's election throughout the entire South Africa trip of mine. We actually celebrated here in a small little city in South Africa. This gentleman is watching the inauguration with me, tears in his eyes, talking to me how this reminds him of when Mandela became president, and he asked me for my shirt. And so in the middle of this bar, we switched shirts, and now he's wearing an Obama shirt somewhere in a little small town in South Africa. But I also saw the economics and the changes of economics throughout the world. I was in Hong Kong at the beginning of the financial struggles that our country began to see, and I saw in the financial capital of Asia the impact of decisions that we made in our country by regulators, by politicians, and the impact that that had across the world. Also, I had the opportunity to be in Bogota, Colombia during their May Day parades and their conversations between individuals and their distrust about American corporate politics. And this May Day parade eventually turns into a little bit of a melee as a group of anarchists come in and go after one thing, the McDonald's on the street. And so here they are, they're rushing towards the McDonald's and eventually start throwing rocks before the military comes in and disperses the crowd. And then I also had the opportunity to see telecommunications at its finest. We are a connected world. This is the last stop before you go up to Everest Base Camp, and it's a cyber cafe. Also had the opportunity to talk to children across the moments of time and talk about technology and how that connected us, even though at times we could not actually talk and communicate in the same language. And so as I looked at that trip, I knew that we have an opportunity to really connect with people, and that's what we need to be doing. And so we really looked at this as an opportunity for citizen diplomacy. How do you take those opportunities, whether you're in your own country or another country, to actually make connections with people? And really that citizen diplomacy is one handshake at a time. How do we create our own foreign policies as individuals? How do we make those connections? And we can do that through a number of ways. We can do that through volunteerism and civic engagement. I had the opportunity to work with Habitat for Humanity and a number of other nonprofit organizations while I'm traveling. And now volunteerism, as they call it, going out and volunteering as you travel, is becoming one of the larger segments in the travel industry boom. Also, had the opportunity to engage with a number of international organizations. This was one of the poverty summits I attended, and here was a conversation by the former Prime Minister of Ireland about how we need to take a look at global poverty and the Millennium Goals that were set up in the year 2000 that most of our countries have forgotten. And our country ourselves, even though we signed on to the Millennium Goals, have never made the actual financial commitment to make those things actually happen. And then, finally, the engagement of a university, having the opportunity to connect with people using the power of interchange and connections. And here's an opportunity that we had in Nigeria with Michigan State University, faculty and staff coming together to talk about how we can actually take democracy, nonprofit action, and bring it together. And I was pleased to be part of that delegation visit. So what did I learn during this trip? Volunteerism can create tolerance. I had the opportunity to be involved with the Habitat for Humanity chapter in India, in Bangalore. And here we were volunteering with a Christian-based organization. We're actually in a village that was predominantly Hindu, but there were Muslim families in there as well. And the first day of our activity with Habitat for Humanity was actually on a Hindu holiday. And so a lot of the people were actually at temple and praying. So we were working with the Muslim families that day. And as we were having conversations with them, they found out that two of the people that were part of the group were actually Hindus. So we stopped the actual work, and they did a Hindu prayer. So the Muslim families did a Hindu prayer because these Hindus were not at temple for their own celebration. And so there was an opportunity here, a Christian-based organization working with Muslims and Hindus in one area. And that's a power that volunteering can really have in making connections. Also, we have to learn about unintended consequences. I spent a significant amount of time in Africa near the end of my trip, and we would often talk about the economics of charity and of aid, that we're oftentimes thinking that we're actually doing good things for people. And so as I was in Tanzania, I had the opportunity to talk to people who were trying to sell clothing. And they said the biggest concern that they had was actually the donations that came from international aid organizations of everybody's old T-shirts and clothes. Because they said, we actually can create clothes here. We have the skills, we have the materials, and when you bring in this flood of free materials from other places, that puts our businesses out of business. We don't have a way of creating our own economies here. And there's a great book called Dead Aid that actually talks about malaria and the fact that we were out promoting malaria and controlling malaria, which is one of the things that we need to do across the country. And what ended up happening was that we took a set of free services that we provided to people, mosquito nets, and we gave them out across the communities in this one country, and the one local business that created mosquito nets actually went out of business. And so when the mosquito nets, after 3 to 5 years of use, get torn and so forth, now you have to go out and actually buy them. The fad is over. People are no longer sending the free mosquito nets. And what's ended up happening in this community is they have to now go to another place to import in mosquito nets. And so that created a really good understanding for me that we also have unintended consequences when we do good. And we have to take a look at the larger picture of how we connect with individuals. Transition to democracy is hard. While I was in Romania, we had the opportunity, again, with Habitat for Humanity. It's one of my favorite charities and one of the groups that I worked with throughout the journey, to work in a community that was still struggling with the transition from communism to democracy. They, at that point, had been 18 years a democratic nation, but what they had found is that people who had owned property under the previous rulership now had been moved around by the communists. And so this family had actually been in a home that another family showed that they had the actual deed to prior to communism. The communists had moved them into that house, so all they did was follow the law and the rule of law at the point in time, and the courts basically said, that is somebody else's house, you now have to leave. And the country itself didn't have any money or resources to relocate them. And so really the nonprofit community had to come in and help them. And so here's a woman and her family has always followed the rules, and now is actually having to go to a nonprofit organization to actually make her life back to a normal livelihood for her and her children. So even though we think democracy is a wonderful way of teaching and a wonderful way of governing, also there is sometimes some difficulties that we don't think about as we make that transition. And then philanthropy is social action. Had the opportunity to meet these two individuals who were from Ethiopia. They had focused on trying to make sure that their government was held accountable. They spent a significant amount of time protesting an election that had happened, and they were thrown in jail with over 100 other people that were considered dissidents. And they were talking about potentially the death penalty for a number of the people that were here. Eventually, a number of organizations internationally had come forward and demanded their release, Amnesty International, Civicus, and other groups. And the government finally said, well, we will allow all of these people to leave jail. We'll let them all go if they all sign a letter saying, we acknowledge what we did was wrong. We were trying to attempt to throw over the government, and sign that document, and then they could leave. These two individuals believed that their actions as individuals with their nonprofit organizations was much bigger than that. They said, we didn't do anything wrong. We challenged our government, and we want to stand by that. So they would not sign. So they actually spent an additional 1.5 years in jail, away from their families, friends, and loved ones, because they wanted to take a stand for having a democracy, for having civil action, and having nonprofit rights within their country. Eventually they were released, but it was people like that that had the opportunity for us to say, we should challenge our government when it needs to be challenged. We need to make sure that we make those connections. So let me just end on a quick story, the power of the internet. I had the opportunity, as I was taking a look at Facebook, I would talk about my trip and my journey, and I would let people know where I'm going. And I was going to the country of Lesotho, and a person said, hey, take a look at one of my friends. She and a group of Peace Corps volunteers are out there. So I had the opportunity to go out there, spent 5 days with these Peace Corps volunteers. And eventually I get a Facebook post from a friend saying, hey, were you ever in Lesotho? And I said, yes. They said, well, there's a Peace Corps volunteer who's looking to try to create a library as they're leaving Lesotho, and they're looking for help to get some books. And I've actually created a piece of work within my elementary school in Holt, and we have all these kids who have collected books, and now we need to ship them. We don't have enough money or resources. And so what we did was we took an opportunity to push this and say, hey, can we help these people who've actually got all these donations actually ship the books? Each container was going to cost $50, and of course the small elementary school couldn't afford it. So between John Snyder at the Lansing State Journal, they were able to raise some money, and through my blog, singaroundtheworld.com, we were able to push this out as well. And now in the small country of Lesotho with Peace Corps volunteers that I had the opportunity to meet, there's a small little library in Lesotho. Again, the power of connection, the power of opportunities, the power for all of us to come together. And so this journey for me was an opportunity for me to learn. It was an incredible experience, and it will be one that I will always cherish. I think the lessons there I learned probably will be more powerful than the ones I would have learned in the classroom. And so today I just leave you with one of my favorite quotes from Mahatma Gandhi. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Thank you very much.